So it has been just about 2 years since I got my hands on this bad boy, the A7RV, and whoa, what can I say, guys? It has been absolutely an amazing last 2 years, taking photos with this camera. And yeah, with 2 years of experience using this thing, I wanted to make a video giving you guys my honest feedback about using this thing both personally and professionally for, of course, the photography side, but also the videography side. And I'm going to start by saying that I'm primarily a videographer, but just like videography, photography has been a huge passion of mine. And yeah, I got a lot to say about this camera. And do I still think it's worth buying 2 years after its original release date? Well, we'll get to that later in the video. So first, I want to talk about the photography performance on this camera. So when I originally got the camera back in 2022, I was actually doing a 3-month world trip, and I had my buddy bring it to me in Cape Town. Prior to using this camera for photos, I was using the Sony A7RV, which honestly still took really great photos, especially for social media purposes. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I didn't see a huge difference right from the beginning of shooting photos with this camera. So it wasn't until 2 or 3 months later of using this thing consistently, and of course editing the raw files on my computer, that I was really able to tell a huge difference. And guys, please keep in mind that a majority of my photography is just being posted on things like Instagram, websites, of course YouTube, and just social media in general. But I'd have to say the biggest 2 differences on this image that I was able to tell compared to my previous camera, which was the A7RV, was just the fact that I could zoom in so much and still have a very clean, sharp looking image. Guys, this camera shoots a whopping 61 megapixels, which is probably more than any of you guys will ever need. Mainly, you really only need 61 megapixels when you're going to be printing really, really large images, or you're going to be putting it on, I don't even know where you would need 61 megapixels for online purposes. Let me know down in the description if you guys know. But yeah, long story short, guys, the images from this camera have just been absolutely phenomenal. I've taken my favorite and best photos of my entire life on this camera. And yeah, I don't think you're going to be disappointed in the overall image quality. And again, to the fact that it has so many megapixels. And the only downside on the photography aspects to this camera that I do have to mention is because it is 61 megapixels, the files are absolutely huge. This thing literally fills up faster than my FX3 shooting 4K 120 frames per second in terms of like how long I'm using it for filming versus video. And just be ready to have massive SD cards, because guys, 61 megapixels is no joke. And it definitely doesn't help that I like to shoot a JPEG version as well to be able to get an idea of what the image looks like as I'm scrolling on my computer. So just keep that in mind. So moving into the next section, I really wanted to touch, based on the last 2 years of using this camera, it definitely has to be the autofocus. This is another absolute best I've ever used in my entire life, especially coming from the A7RV. But the autofocus on this camera, guys, is absolutely insane. There are more than 963 autofocus points on this camera, and pairing that with the AI processing that they use internally with the camera just makes your life a whole lot easier when you're shooting out on the go. Now, I'm sure a lot of the new Sony cameras all have really great autofocus systems similar to this one, but what I can say is that if you're coming from an older camera, or that's like a selling point to if you want to purchase this camera or not, guys, you're not going to be disappointed. Even allow you to select cars, birds, animals, humans. It also has an AI tracking feature that allows you to pick what you want to track. For example, you could pick a human, you could pick an animal, you could pick a car, and then using the AI processing and the software that's internalized in this camera, it will just keep this subject in focus. Even if there's something that gets in the way of the shot, it will still keep them in focus due to the AI processing. I just don't see where or why you would need any faster autofocus system in today's world, or even over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So that definitely means that this thing is going to be good for the long haul when it comes to autofocus. So the next item I want to talk about is this swivelly screen. So this was actually the first camera on Sony's lineup that had this swivelly screen, which pretty much can like go up and down like the original A7RV, but then it can also flip out and be like a flip screen so that you can look at yourself as well for video purposes. So you pretty much get the best of both worlds. Guys, I absolutely love the fact that this camera can do that. My only complaint with that is that after using this camera professionally and of course for myself over the last 2 years, I use this thing as a tool. So over time, it gets thrown into my camera bag, it gets thrown into my Pelican, and this thing is definitely starting to get a little bit loose compared to when I originally had the camera, when I bought it brand new. So hopefully I'm not going to have to send it into Sony anytime soon. It'll do for now, but it's just something to keep in mind since it's the first of its kind. And now 2 years later, that is starting to kind of get a little bit loose, on the back end. However, everything else on the camera is perfectly intact. Of course, there's some wear and tear on it from, of course, using it professionally. But guys, for the amount of photos that I've taken on this camera, it still looks pretty good. It's holding up good. I've taken this thing into the desert. I've taken it onto the beach. I've taken it into the snow. I've taken it pretty much anywhere you could imagine. So yeah, it holds up very, very well. So if that's something you're worried about, only pluses on that side, other than, of course, keep in mind that screen could potentially start to get a little wiggly down the road. So moving into the next aspect of this camera, I wanted to speak about the video performance. So as I mentioned earlier, video is really my first form of art in this world. And guys, don't underestimate this thing as a photography camera. I'm shooting on an FX3 at the moment, but there have been numerous times where instead of using the FX30 or the FX6, I've used the R5 as a B camera to the FX3 due to just having it in my camera bag, or for whatever reason, it just happens sometimes. But I don't even question it because I know that it's more than capable of achieving a beautiful look. Of course, it shoots S-Log 10-bit up to 60 frames per second. So really the only thing you're missing on the video side is going to be the 120 frames per second, and the low light performance is probably not as good because the sensor is 61 megapixels compared to the 12 megapixel sensor in some of Sony's video lineup, which is a little bit more advanced to explain. But long story short, the more megapixels that you add to a sensor, the worse that it does in low light performance. And I don't know the actual reason behind that, but maybe somebody could put that comments down below. Long story short, those are really the only two things that this thing is lacking on the video side, but you're still going to be able to get really, really good low light performance. It is a Sony camera after all, and I've used this camera multiple times as a video B cam, and you could really use this as an A cam in a lot of shoots if you wanted to do that as well. One thing to keep in mind using this thing, and some experience that I've had, using this with an FX3 or other Sony cameras, is the color grading is a little bit different and a little bit off. And I know that might not make a lot of sense because you're like, oh, it's just another Sony camera, you're shooting S-Log 3. But yeah, when I literally shoot the exact same settings, the same aperture, the same white balance, S-Log 3 and all the good stuff, it still comes out a little bit different. Of course, it's a different sensor. So when I try to pair that up with the Sony FX3 or the A7S III, I will have to make a few minor adjustments to just try to, match the image. But other than that, guys, I've had a very, very great experience using this thing as a video camera. And in addition, this thing also shoots 8K, which is pretty insane. Now, I don't see the need to use 8K often. I did test it out once. File sizes are way too big. It filled up my SD card way too quickly. And in addition, when you do quick movements shooting in 8K on this camera, you'll get a lot of distortion since this thing definitely doesn't have a rolling shutter or anything like that that is needed to prevent that in video. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. You're not going to get the same stability of the image like you would on one of Sony's video lineups. But with that all being said, if you're looking for a camera that's primarily for photography and you still want to have the abilities to shoot really high-end video, guys, this is definitely going to be your best bet. If you guys are willing to spend almost $4,000 for a body, the cheaper alternative that a lot of people are buying is just the A7 IV, which is also a killer of a camera. My buddy George actually just got that A7 IV, so I'm going to be doing a head-to-head of the A7RV versus the A7 IV. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys would like me to test on each one of those cameras. And let me know down if you think that this camera has enough to offer to drop $4,000 $100,000 on it. It definitely was for me, and I know I'm going to be able to use this camera for years and years and years to come. I don't anticipate upgrading anytime soon, because I literally just don't need to. In addition, if you guys are an upcoming videographer who is looking to make money in the video business, I just launched a course called creatorhead.io, where I teach you everything that you need to know to scale your agency from $0 to $10,000 per month and start making your dream a reality. If you guys want more information, go ahead and check out the link down below. I'm offering 50% off for the first 20 students, so use the code JUD50 and I'll see you guys over there. And as always, guys, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and as always, peace out.